Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for your interest in the Community Initiatives Program Operating Grant Stream in this information session. My name is Lori Campbell and I'm a Community Grants Advisor with the Community Grants Unit with Alberta Culture. I work primarily in the Community Initiatives Program Operating Grant Stream, commonly referred to as CIP Operating. The purpose of this information session today is to provide general information and clarity about the CIP operating program and explain the funding priorities for the program. I am pleased to be supported by my colleagues Phil Chung and Rochelle Ishmael. Both Phil and Rochelle have provided immense support to set up and host this session today. They will now introduce themselves, starting with Rochelle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rochelle Ishmael, and I am the Program Coordinator for the Multiculturalism, Indigenous, and Inclusions Grant Program.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Chung, and I'm a Community Development Officer with Alberta Culture and Status of Women. Today, I will be facilitating the Q&A session right at the very end of this presentation. Thank you.
The session will be 1 hour, starting with an approximate 35-minute overview of the program, followed by the Q&A session. Please remember the session is being recorded today, so you can refer to it again after it is posted on our website. Rochelle will put the website up. Yeah, thanks, Rochelle.
You're welcome. So we would love to know who you are and which organization you are representing today. So we'd greatly appreciate if you'd rename yourselves in the participants list for us. To find the participants list, click the participants button in the main menu bar of Zoom. It will be located at the bottom of your Zoom window. So following the directions provided on the screen there, just hover your mouse over your name in the participants list and then select the More button, then click Rename, enter your name and organization, and then click OK. So we'll just give you a couple seconds to find your way through that. All right, thank you, everyone. So right now I'd like to take a moment to recognize that this is the homeland of many diverse people in Alberta, including First Nations and Métis, whose ancestors have walked this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to work, live, and learn on this traditional territory that includes Treaties 6, 7, and 8. Here is the agenda for today's general information session. We will start today's presentation with an introduction to community grants, then we'll discuss an overview of CIP operating, followed by the community fundraising eligibility worksheet and the CIP operating budget. Then we will go over some application tips before our question and answer time. You can submit your questions throughout the session in the chat box, which will be collected by Phil and held until the end of the session. After the chat box questions are addressed, if we have time, we will then go to live questions. If we run out of time for your question and answers, you may contact us after the session. So there is no break scheduled for today, so please feel free to step away at any time if needed. So let's get started. First of all, we want to thank you for your interest in the CIP operating program and for wanting to make a positive difference in the lives of Albertans. We hope the session will be helpful to you to learn more about the program and whether it is a good fit for your organization. This slide here covers a broad overview of community grants. So the Community Grant Unit is a part of the Community Engagement Branch within the Ministry of Culture and Status of Women.
The CIP program purpose. CIP provides funding opportunities that support program outcomes to strengthen leadership and organizational capacity of community organizations and/or support community-driven goals that have a public benefit. These outcomes are achieved by providing funding for projects that enhance and enrich communities throughout Alberta. Within CIP, there are 3 streams: the operating stream, the project-based stream, and the major cultural and sports event stream. We encourage you to understand the stream you are applying to and only refer to and use the guidelines and forms related to that funding stream.
From here on, we will be speaking primarily about the CIP operating grant stream. CIP Project Base is also doing information sessions with the intent to post all community grant sessions for each program on the website for future reference. Please note that there are differences in eligible organizations between each CIP funding stream. Listed here are the eligible organizations under CIP Operating. It should be noted that a collaborative must meet additional eligibility requirements to be considered. So please see Section 3.1 of the guidelines for these requirements. Most CIP operating organizations are registered under the Societies Act or under the Canadian Revenue Act as a charity. All organizations must be legally registered or incorporated for a minimum of 1 full year before they are eligible to apply to CIP operating. For example, organizations that were registered in August of 2021 would first be eligible to apply for the September 15th, 2022 application intake. And an organization registered in October 2021 would first be eligible to apply for the January 15th, 2023 intake. So there's a few things to remember. Only organizations that have an active status with the corporate registry are eligible to apply. If you are not sure about your Alberta corporate registry status, you can call them at 1-800-661-3723. And I'll just get Lori maybe to post that into the chat box in case you want it for your future reference. Organizations that have any overdue or incomplete accounts or reporting related to any grant previously awarded by Culture and Status of Women are not eligible to apply until they are in good standing. So this needs to be completed and signed off by the appropriate area. If you are unsure if your organization has outstanding accounting, please contact our office prior to submitting your application.
Here is a brief overview of the CIP Operating Grant stream. CIP Operating is primarily intended for the ongoing operations of small to medium nonprofit organizations with a total annual operating budget of less than $2 million. CIP Operating focuses on addressing social issues and those directly serving vulnerable and disadvantaged individuals with basic human needs programs and services like food, shelter, and safety. CIP Operating funds administrative and ongoing operating costs for up to a maximum of 2 years. Organizations may only be approved for CIP Operating once every 3 years. This ensures different organizations can be considered within a 3 to 4 year period. CIP Operating recognizes the need for key staff positions to effectively run an organization, and often applications include salaries for executive directors, volunteer coordinators, and other critical administrative positions. Other common eligible operating expenses include rent, utilities, and insurance.
We ask that you keep in mind timelines for your application and when you apply. We recommend that your budget start date be after the anticipated notification period for the CIP Operating Grant. Expenses incurred prior to the application intake deadline are not eligible to be included in the budget. Please note, incurring expenses prior to notification of decision is at your own risk.
Here are the CIP operating funding priorities. They are to enhance the quality of life of Albertans by providing direct services and programs that address social issues, creating equitable access to human, social, and economic resources and services for all Albertans, or to supporting community collaborations involving multiple organizations in addressing broader human or social issues. Through this information session today, we are clearly highlighting these 3 funding priorities for CIP Operating. The priorities of the program are on the website and within the guidelines to be open and transparent. We strongly encourage you to read the program guidelines prior to submitting your application.
Now let's take a closer look at each of the 3 main funding priorities. The first funding priority includes organizations that enhance the quality of life of Albertans by providing direct programs and services that address social issues. These could include organizations like food banks or women's shelters, housing societies dealing with homelessness, or organizations directly addressing poverty. Some of the organizations considered include LGBTQ2S+ agencies, counseling services open to the general public, agencies supporting individuals in crisis, suicide prevention, domestic violence services, youth at-risk programming, agencies that support homelessness, or seniors organizations focusing on isolated and vulnerable seniors providing outreach and support or addressing elder abuse. The second priority area is creating equitable access to human, social, and economic resources and services for all Albertans. This priority includes organizations that address the needs of individuals with physical or mental challenges like autism or brain injury. It also includes organizations dealing with low-income or single-parent families. Typical organizations funded include youth mentorship organizations that serve the broader community or organizations assisting newcomers to bridge their transitions into Albertan communities. The third priority supports established community collaboratives addressing a social issue. So these are organizations that are at the exploration stage of forming a collaborative that would not be eligible. Please refer to the guidelines for all of the requirements. Collaborative approaches to complex social issues are recognized as an effective way to tackle entrenched issues such as poverty and trauma.
As shown on the slide, there is a mandatory information checklist at the beginning of the application for you to use. Ensure you provide current and/or recent financial statements, including a signed statement of financial position, also known as a balance sheet, and income statement or revenue and expense summary, including the net surplus or deficit. Bank statements and trial balances are not accepted as financial statements for CIP operating. Applications may be returned if they are incomplete. The CIP operating application was updated in May 2020 in an effort to better collect information needed to evaluate your application and with the intent to limit narrative questions. Many of the questions are now checkboxes, so you don't have to guess what type of information we're looking for. We encourage you to use the application form to tell your organization's story, including information like your primary mission and purpose, demographics of clients served, how and where your programs are offered, what organizations you are working in partnership with, any unique needs you are addressing, and the outcomes of CIP operating funding.
There are two funding levels within the CIP operating maximum request of $75,000. The core funding maximum grant request is $60,000, which must be matched. We will explain eligible expenses and the uniqueness of CIP operating matching later in this session. Organizational development funding, what we refer to as ODF, maximum grant request is $15,000 and is non-matching. Please note that you cannot apply for ODF on its own. If an organization applies only for ODF, the application will be canceled.
Here are some examples of eligible core operating expenses. They include program expenses that an organization incurs on an ongoing basis, executive directors, administrative staff, volunteer coordinators, counselors, fund development, or program staff. We also look at rent, insurance, utilities, internet, staff and volunteer training, evaluation, and audit costs. CIP operating recognizes the importance of internal organization capacity and the need for organizations to operate with core leadership or essential staff. Funding requests for executive directors and other positions and costs not directly attached to programs are commonly considered. For newer organizations, particularly that have limited cash costs to date, CIP operating considers whether your organization has the capacity to generate the necessary revenue to cover these costs in the future. We also consider your organization's experience managing and reporting on cash revenue and expenses. Your organization is expected to manage your financial resources and demonstrate steady, manageable growth, although we understand COVID has put a tremendous strain on revenue generation and fundraising opportunities. We encourage you to present your budget to CIP operating based on what you've been able to achieve and demonstrate recently.
Let's talk a little more about ODF. ODF is intended to strengthen your capacity and is broken into 4 elements. To be eligible for ODF, you must conduct and submit a self-assessment with your grant application to determine your internal strengths and weaknesses in the following 4 areas. The first area is strategic leadership. This is the ability of board members and senior leaders to inspire, prioritize, provide direction, make decisions, and innovate, all in an effort to achieve the organization's mission. The second area is adaptive capacity. This is the ability of the organization to monitor, assess, and respond to internal and external change to improve the organization's performance, relevance, and impact. The third area is management capacity. This is the ability of the organization to ensure the effective and efficient use of its resources. Lastly is operational capacity. This is the ability of the organization to develop, implement, evaluate, and improve programs and services. You can find the capacity assessment tool form on the CIP operating website, which Lori will post for you now. So just remember that applying for organizational development funding is optional. Here's the first page of the Organizational Capacity Assessment Tool. There are 4 other pages, one for each capacity element. It is a useful tool to help you evaluate where you are at any given time. The completed capacity assessment tool must be submitted with the application along with a clear plan and/or quote of how your request will address the work to be done and increase your capacity in the desired area. All pages of the assessment tool must be completed and submitted with the application. We encourage you to go through this tool with your board or to have each board member complete it and then submit the average scores. On this slide, you will see examples of eligible ODF expenses. Please note that you must align your organizational needs with one or more of the 4 elements. Examples of capacity building may include website and communications, fund development like marketing, strategy, or software upgrades to manage and provide secure client data, such as an increasing secure remote access capacity, improving ability to track and report on outcomes and results to funders, and strategic planning. You are expected to research costs or provide a quote with the scope of work and specific deliverables related to the capacity improvement area. Section F of the application form provides a template that will help you. So here is Section F of the application form. Section F provides guidance that breaks down the capacity element being worked on, including the goal or outcome, the activities to get there, the timeline, measures or indicators of success, as well as the costs for each portion. Section F of the application needs to be completed with the details, scope of work, and a budget breakdown of the work to be done. The information in Section F of the application should be consistent with the summary information you entered into your CIP operating budget template. The maximum CIP operating request for organizational development funding is $15,000, so your organization will have to contribute any dollars that are over that $15,000. Next, we will discuss the required community fundraising eligibility worksheet.
The CIP Operating Grant has a unique matching feature based on demonstrated community fundraising revenue and support that your organization has already achieved. The Community Fundraising Eligibility Worksheet uses your most recent full fiscal year or current financial period, whichever financial period benefits your organization the most. Matching for CIP operating is based on actual recent results only. Matching must be equal to or exceed the core funding grant request. Matching can include everything your organization has already occurred, up to and including the application intake date. Eligible matching revenue should be non-government based and may include family, private, and community foundation grants, United Way funding, bingo, raffle, or casino funds, corporate donations, private donations, revenue from fundraising activities that made a net profit, or facility rental revenue. Recent signed financial statements must be provided to support and verify the fundraising worksheet breakdowns. Please note municipal, provincial, and federal funding is government-based and therefore not eligible towards community fundraising matching. Fee-for-service revenue, tax and GST rebates, membership fees, and interest are also ineligible. For CIP operating, we are focusing on community fundraising support. You may also demonstrate community support through in-kind goods and services to meet matching requirements, though some ability to raise cash is expected to ensure your organization can continue to sustain operating costs or positions beyond potential CIP operating funding. Eligible in-kind goods and services that can be considered are not government-based and were acquired in the most recent fiscal year or current financial period. Amounts should be based on fair market value. Any amounts over $5,000 should be explained and/or support letter provided. The explanation can also be included in the partnerships area of the application under Section D, Question 7. You may also demonstrate community support through volunteer hours to meet matching requirements. For CIP operating, eligible volunteer hours include all actual hours for the entire organization for the most recent fiscal year or current financial period, valued at $20 per hour. Hours for board or committee meetings, administrative, event, and program-related services are eligible, and if volunteer hours are not formally recorded, you may estimate them based on regular programming or use that you have. Please keep your calculations in case we require clarification or your file is selected for audit. Here is a look at the fundraising worksheet. It is a mandatory document for the application and it's on the application checklist. If you have any questions about your specific organization's matching eligibility, please contact us for clarification. Please have your recent financial statements available when you call to help us guide you.
Next, we will discuss the required CIP operating budget. Core operating requests up to $60,000 maximum over 2 years may be requested. So you do not show your entire organization's budget, only the areas that you wish to apply for. Matching does not have to be demonstrated on the budget because matching is completed on the Community Fundraising Eligibility Worksheet. Maximum core operating requests cannot exceed the matching eligibility. Organizational development funding up to $15,000 may be requested. Please note that it can only be requested with core operating requests. CIP operating budget and Section F of the application should be consistent. A deeper dive into the budget and fundraising eligibility worksheet will occur on August 19th. Please sign up through the Eventbrite link on our website, which Lori will post for you now. For those not able to attend the session, a recording will be posted on our website as soon as we can make it available. This is a sample of the CIP operating budget form. It is a mandatory document with any CIP operating application. On this form, you should show the total projected cost for the position or operating cost you are requesting. You do not have to put forth any funding towards the project costs on the budget because matching for CIP operating is based on the Community Fundraising Eligibility Worksheet that we just referenced. We do, however, require or we encourage you to put some funding towards the amounts you are requesting from CIP operating. Please note for any staff positions requested, a job description must be included. The job description should include duties, responsibilities, hours to be worked daily and weekly, qualifications and skills, and how the wage was determined for the position. Again, please note that the ODF budget requests, which is the yellow section here, are not mandatory, but they can be applied for only at the time of a core operating grant request, which is the blue section. Next, we will discuss funding criteria and application tips.
Core funding criteria and application tips. CIP operating applications are evaluated based on how well they meet the CIP operating guidelines located on our website. Evaluation and assessment is based on overall clarity. Does your organization tell a clear story of your work, the focus of your programming, and the demographics you serve? Is the information consistent with budget and financial statements? Is your application complete with all of the required information and mandatory documents on the checklist? Are your financial statements and embedded grant agreements signed and submitted with the application? Also look at mission focus. Does your organization's primary mission and purpose address a social issue like poverty, homelessness, or food security? Do you serve vulnerable and disadvantaged individuals on a daily or regular basis, or those facing significant mental, physical, or cultural challenges and barriers? Organization and budget viability. Has your organization demonstrated the ability to raise funds to sustain the proposed operating costs after receiving the grant? Is your proposed budget reasonable based on your recent operations? How many paid staff has your organization had over the last 2 years? What is being proposed? Is that sustainable for the future? Demonstrated impact. What is the social issue or need your organization is addressing? How broad is the impact in community? Are there other organizations already providing similar services, and are you working collaboratively with these agencies or groups? Have you provided support letters from community partners and organizations that recognize and support the need and benefit of the programs and services your organization provides? Financial management. Has your organization been operating with the limits of your available financial resources and within a reasonable net profit or loss? Do you have sufficient experience in managing cash revenues equal to or exceeding the grant requested? Does your organization have debt, loans, or significant liabilities? Is your board made up of at least 5 members from within Alberta? Is there a perceived conflict of interest relative to volunteer and staff positions or contracts taken on by the organization? Organizations are considered lower risk if they have broad board representation and oversight and no significant debts or loans that have not been addressed. Other special considerations include, has your organization or community experienced significant challenges beyond your control? Is your ability to generate revenue down significantly as a result of wildfire, floods, or another catastrophic event? Was your organization critical during these community challenges? Is your organization located in a remote, rural part of Alberta with limited services and limited opportunities to generate revenue? We are in the process of developing an application assistance tool, and we do hope to have that up on the website soon to lay out those funding considerations.
Here are a few ODF tips and questions to consider. Have you completed the capacity assessment tool? Will the proposed project improve a capacity area that you have identified in the capacity assessment tool? Did you complete Section F in your application form? Is your description in Section F of the application consistent with the information on your budget? And lastly, did you provide quotes or indicate costs based on other organizations who have done similar work?
Let's discuss the grants process. To demystify this process, once you submit your application, we want to provide some further clarity on it. First, when you submit your application, preferably by email, we do an initial screening of basic eligibility requirements. That is, have you received CIP operating funding within the last 3 years? Organizations that received special COVID funding for the June 15th, 2020 application intake are exempt from this 1 and 3 year rule for that particular funding intake only. Next, the Community Grants Advisor reviews your application and all supporting documents. After this initial review, you can expect to receive a phone call and/or email from us if we have any follow-up questions or clarification needed from you. We generally give you anywhere from 3 to 5 business days to respond to these requests to give you adequate time to gather the information. Finally, following this stage, a grant review panel is convened, which then makes a recommendation to our department leaders on whether the project should be funded or not. All decisions are final, and notification of decision is communicated by email to the applicant from the program area. Organizations that are unsuccessful are encouraged to contact the program area for feedback on their application submission, and we can provide you advice on how to strengthen future submissions.
Thank you everyone for your interest in CIP operating and for holding your questions until the end of today's presentation. At this point, we will stop the recording.